I would like to invite on stage Dakshet Mehta. Let's welcome him with a big round of applause.
Super. Thank you very much. My name is Dakshet Mehta, and I'm not going to talk about Gen AI. So we have used that topic enough to sort of skip it for the day, at least for the next 10 minutes that I'm going to talk about. I want to start with a question to you all. My question is very simple. When we make a presentation, the file is saved as presentation, using PowerPoint presentation. PPT, and if you convert into a slideshow, PPS. That's thoughtfully said as putting people to sleep. It's a weapon of mass destruction which we have all managed to effectively use today to sort of disengage a lot of people over here, and which is the whole talk about doing a self-directed learning over here. So I want to start with one simple line over here which talks about what is self-directed learning, right? Is there anyone who's not aware of what is self-directed learning over here? We all know it, right? It's a process, right? More importantly, it's a process in which an individual takes the responsibility and the accountability of, doing the whole learning, right? What role do we have to play over here? It's about the individual, it's about the motivation of that individual, it's about the ecosystem that has been provided to the person, right? And which is where we play as an L&D, teams, critical role, and which is what we're going to try and touch upon in next about 10 minutes, right? I'm going to skip this. We all know what is the self-directed learning and what are the advantages for an individual and organization. But more importantly, how do we all learn? We all learn through acquiring knowledge, practice, feedback, and reflection, right? This is a classic learning loop, and I'm pretty sure as an L&D professional you are aware of it. But that's the crux of it. What am I trying to bring over here is some of the basics over here, right? While we spoke about the modern learning technologies, the Gen AIs, and the modern technology in terms of your blended learning 3.0 or hyper-personalization, but try and understand one thing. If the basics are not set right, I'm sorry to say all these modern technologies are not going to work for you. It may be a harsh truth for all of us, but that's the fact, right? So, learner classification on a quick note, it's dependent learners versus the interested learner. I want to learn, but what do I learn? I'm confused with, right? Involved learners, where I'm involved when somebody brings learning to me, I'm probably attached, I'm probably looking at it, I'm probably reading at it, right? But then the top of the pyramid is the self-directed learners who are like, they don't need any motivation. I mean, they don't need any push. They're all ready. They all understand what do they want to do, where do they want to go. Their goals are very clear. They want to learn towards it. And those are the learners. You just need to provide a great ecosystem, right? So a basic classification of learners over here. Learning ecosystem. I think morning first session, if you have second session, the Udemy session, if you have attended, we had a discussion around synchronous and asynchronous learning, right? Synchronous learning is more like the kind of environment that we are in, right? And you have passive versus active learning in that space. Passive is probably you are right now listening to me or maybe disengaged, right? But active is where you are still trying to understand what am I saying and making some notes of it, right? So in those four buckets, I'm going to try and set some classification of the learning ecosystem, which is about synchronous passive, synchronous active, asynchronous, which is you and I are not in front of each other, the e-learning modules that we consume. And it could be a library for a fun of it. You just go and use it, but don't really take any messages out of it. And then follow it up by an asynchronous active engagement, right? Now that's the crux of all this conversation. That is at the top of every L&D professional's mind, right? And we are saying, hey, self-directed learners sit in that particular bucket over here, which is the important part. Now, I'm not saying others are not important. All these four brackets are important. When you want to pass a message, you really need to do an asynchronous passive learning. It's like a webinar, publishing things, and people may listen, disengage, checking their emails over it, but that's fine. Certain messages are delivered the same way, right? You look at the synchronous active learning, which is where your audience is engaged, like this kind of forum. But can we conduct this kind of session every day? The answer is no, right? So it's very effective in terms of your classroom trainings, But the problem is it's not really a scalable model. When you talk about a large-scale organization, your problem is you're looking at a couple of thousand of employees, and those couple of thousand of employees cannot be made sit into a class and taught something, right? So you need to offer the asynchronous passive learning mode in terms of offering them the learning libraries. And I'm not going to recommend any specific, the organization. We all use our preferences and the libraries which, suits our organization, our budget, our needs. But then some of it meets the criteria of making learning reach to the individuals, right? And then the asynchronous learning, whether we offer them library or not, they're going to learn. They will go to YouTube, they'll buy the courses outside, they will engage into personal investments and really learn something, right? So if we give them the right kind of ecosystem, they'll prosper much faster. Moving ahead, I'm going to skip 4 of these slides. In fact, I wanted to talk about when to use which of the models, what are the benefits, challenges, and what kind of examples over here. But due to lack of time, I'm just going to rush through it. We all understand some fundamentals. Anyways, you're going to get the slides. So I will stop at a particular slide, which is more about the active learning over here, asynchronous and active learning, which is where you need to have highly motivated learners, again, have diverse competencies. We all have heard the term called skill-based organization, right? SBOs, which is where you need to have the skills identified, and then those skills are then mapped, and then again those mapped skills are further, used to generate recommendations, which is your hyperlearning, right? But understand this, it's not a role-based learning. For a role-based learning, you are assigning something or curating something for a Java developer. But in the bucket of Java developer, you got 500 employees, and all 500 employees are not at the same level of competence, right? So they need different touch points, and which is where the hyper-personalization helps. Personalized learning experiences, learners can actively practice and learn concepts, learning engagement is high. The challenge is it relies on the learner's motivation. So I'm going to put a point over here in terms of, what are the key characteristics? Self-motivation, goal setting, personalized resources. If I'm motivated, I'll go and identify the right kind of resources that suits me, right? Autonomy. A learner gets a chance to pick up learning modules, resources, channels of their own choice. They are not bound by what has been offered to them, right? Followed by monitoring and reflection. These are some of the characteristics. But if these are the characteristics, they probably turn into a challenge themselves, right? Basic learning model, the process which is setting up the goal, identification of resources, and evaluating the progress. But what is more important here is, this looks very simple. Have we mastered it? Is it still a problem for us? Anyone? Depends on the maturity of the organization, depends on the size. For MNCs, these are bigger problems. You got probably 10,000, 15,000, 50,000 employees. 50,000 employees in a self-directed learning model. You need to have an ecosystem. You need to have a model which works for them. You need to have an approach towards adopting this. This may look very simple, but implementation of this is highly impossible, right? So these are some of the challenges that we probably would see, and which is where I want to sort of put a thought around the strategy that we should look at in terms of fostering the self-directed learning. I mean, the first thing to start with is the management sponsorship, right? If your management does not buy in that we need to have these kind of models, you don't have support for these kind of things, right? Then nothing flies. We all know about this, right? More importantly, I'm trying to recommend over here a particular thought wherein, let's say this is a year beginning for many of us, right? And we all set objectives for our employees, or the employees set objectives for them for the rest of the year. Can we work towards an ecosystem wherein alongside the individual goals which are set, the manager and the employee does a discussion to sort of set an individual development plan, right? Imagine all employees in your firm set up an individual development plan, and that individual development plan is executed throughout the year. At the end of the year, the whole benchmark of the organization is risen above, right? the hypothetical scenario and the most effective one that you would love to see. And which is where the whole thing is. Learning linked performance system, if that is what we implement, you learn, and that's what is counted towards some of the benefits towards the end of the year, that hey, you learned, so I'm going to give you 1% hike more or 1% bonus extra. The most effective way, right? Are we doing it? Maybe answer varies from organization to organization. Variety of learning. This is where all us learning professionals come into picture, wherein we can offer the most lucrative, fancy looking, modern learning resources to them, and self-practice opportunities, wherein we are talking about, the social learning ecosystem being developed. And at the end, do we give them the rewards for doing it? So if we do a rewards and recognition framework, that is where, it becomes the best, right? So that's food of thought for us in terms of implementing a self-directed learning. I'm gonna go to the last slide and leave you with the thought. With best of the resources that we work toward, your employees may still leave, right? But if you don't give them the opportunity, they're definitely going to leave. So you make your choice, whether you want to invest and maybe increase the chances of employees staying, building the brand of the organization, or maybe you want to live in a silo wherein you say, it doesn't work for us, we just work, no fun, no play, no learn, and yep, you toss out the whole culture. With that, I think we don't have time for questions, but I'm going to be around if you have any questions or any discussions. Right? Super. Thank you.